Hey everyone, welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour UFC 184 Countermove, DraftKings DFS preview. You like cash? Of course you do. That's why you're here. In studio with me to help me win some of those big bucks. Cody Saftik, Fight Network, what's happening?
It's all about the money, man. That's why I'm here.
All right, so again, as I will preface before all of these UFC MMA breakdowns, I don't know anything about MMA.
You're getting better.
I'm starting to learn the names a little bit better.
Right.
I'm hoping to shoot for the 80th percentile when it comes to getting correct pronunciations this week. But I do know a bit about daily fantasy, so let's see if we can win some cash in the salary cap game. Again, DraftKings, $50,000 as a salary cap. You get 5 fighters. Countermove 5 fighters, you get half that, $25,000. So you can find some good value in between sites for one thing, but we'll try to find out who's going to score the big points. I mean, if you had played last weekend's card and just picked underdogs the entire way, you would have been looking pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
So, let's get to the first match. Rowdy Ronda Rousey, yes?
Oh, yes.
Versus Cat Zingano?
Yes.
Boom!
Alpha Cat.
How is she Cat Alpha Cat?
Well, you know what? It's one of those names that are like, you can't be Smiling Sam Alvey. You're just Smiling Sam Alvey. In this case, it's Alpha Cat Zingano.
See, that makes a lot more sense.
The nickname becomes before the cat.
But that's not how it's written on my page. I don't know this stuff. So we have undefeateds clashing here, but Ronda Rousey is a gigantic favorite.
Yeah, minus 900. Pretty big.
13,500 on DraftKings, 5,700 on Countermove, and obviously the opposite. Not looking good for Zingano. Zingano?
Yeah, Cat Zingano.
See, it should be Zing-ano. You got to really pronounce that.
Gives
zing.
a bit of a ring, right?
Got to have the zing in it.
Bit of a zinger.
So are you going to splurge and spend a lot of your bankroll on Ronda Rousey?
Yes, you have to, because the thing with Ronda Rousey is she's notorious for being a finisher, and she finishes early. And as we know, for DraftKings and Countermove, that's something that you most definitely want, is that quick finish. Whether she gets it by knockout or submission, she's shown a lot of versatility. So yeah, if I'm hunting for points here, I know Ronda Rousey is expensive. I know the other teams are going to have her. But I'm not going to be one of the few teams that's missing out on the sweepstakes of points coming my way.
So there's no value in the Alpha Cat?
There's value in that she's, I believe, the cheapest player.
She is, but I mean, if there's no value, she's going to get knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, well, let's say she makes it past one round. She stuffs 2 takedowns and lands a couple strikes. You might be able to get some bare minimum points. I could see somebody maybe even drafting both of them because you have the most expensive player with the cheap player. And no matter what happens, you might be able to bank some points from it.
Do you think it can go 3 rounds? Is this 5 round or 3 round?
5 round fight.
Do you think how many rounds do you think it goes?
I would have to say this fight's probably, I'm thinking it's going to go 2, maybe
Max.
3 rounds tops. If it finished in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, like I said, Ronda Rousey, she finishes early very often. But she has gone to the 4th round before in the past as well. So it's not crazy to think that she can't go a couple rounds. It is possible.
All right, so I'm going to backtrack off that. So I'll probably end up with Rousey on one of my teams. Let's get to the next match. Actually, no, what I want to ask you, did someone pull off this card? Like, is this the first ever pay-per-view headlined by a female fight?
Actually, Ronda Rousey has done this before, so she's the only female to ever headline a pay-per-view.
So
this card was originally supposed to have Chris Weidman versus
that makes more sense
for the middleweight title.
So
there's a lot of people complaining it's a bit of a soft card, but sometimes that's just the way it happens.
Well, I just noticed, I mean, I'm not sure what the odds are on all these fights, but I just look at the prices and the values of a lot of these fighters, and they're astronomical. Like,
through the roof.
There's so many underdogs this week, like cheap underdogs. So you're going to have to tell me which one of these ones are going to hit. So it's not going to be the Alpha Cat. Let's move to the next fight. Holly Holm, the preacher's daughter, versus Raquel Pennington. And the thing that stood out to me, with so much disparity between all the values, Holm is only $100 cheaper than Ronda Rousey on DraftKings, where you do get more money, which is strange. And then on Countermove, she's $400 cheaper. So is there actually value to go with Holm over Rousey in Countermove?
You know what? When I was putting my teams together for both of them, I considered that. I wanted both on my team because both are notorious as finishers, and I presume that both will rack up a lot of points. But I couldn't quite afford to have them both on my team.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. Like, you're taking pitiful fighters
if
you stack those.
Exactly. And you're hoping, okay, maybe I'll get a couple first-round finishes between these two, and then I got guys like Roman Salazar and Richie Walsh filling out the rest of it. Let's hope they get something. In this case, I really balanced out the two of them, and I thought Ronda Rousey would be the better choice just because she can finish the fights in more ways. She's notorious for being a finisher in the UFC and in her MMA career in general. And Holly Holm, this is her UFC debut. So it's a different case, you know, the lights, the pressure, the what am I going to do? I wasn't fully sold on her, and for that reason, I thought there was more value in Rousey.
So is this Raquel Pennington some sort of scrub? She's 5-4.
She's 5-4. She won her last fight, so she was 4-4 coming into that one.
So, but I mean, if you say if the pressure can get to Holm, Is there any value to take Pennington?
I actually did take Pennington. I took Pennington on my DraftKings because I got her for $6,400.
$6,400,
which is very cheap.
That's bottom of the barrel. That's cheaper than the Alpha Cat. That's probably the cheapest player on the board.
And so I needed people that were going to be cheap because I took some rather
high-end. Well, I mean, there's a huge disparity. I mean, most of the fighters are either super highly priced because they're huge favorites.
And that's part of the strategy.
Like how many close within, let's say, in terms of betting odds, like how many plus 150s are there on this card? None?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, are there any even fights?
There's a couple, but they're the ones like the James Krauses versus Valdemir Lazaro. Do you really want to touch it? You don't really know what's going to happen.
I like that name, Valdemir. That's a good
Pretty
name.
menacing, right?
It is. Wait, is he Russian?
No, he's Brazilian.
No. That's less scary.
He looks scary to see him.
All right, next fight. Josh Koscheck versus Jake Ellenberger. Koscheck coming in at $8,500 on DraftKings, making him the underdog, and Ellenberger coming in at $1,140 in terms of DraftKings. And he's getting a better price on Kountermove at only $5,000, so you can squeeze him in if you do believe in him. Do you believe in Ellenberger?
I actually went with him for my Kountermove selection. I'm not fully sold on Ellenberger. It has nothing to do with his skill set. He's a very, very talented guy. Good wrestler, good striking, good cardio, good chin. He seems to have the complete package. His issue is that he just can't seem to tie it together. In his last couple of performances, he's very gun-shy. He doesn't throw a whole lot of punches. He just seems to not be the same guy that entered the UFC a few years ago. I think there's something going on with him. In this case against Josh Koscheck, he's basically fighting himself. He was 37 years old and,
not
shocked.
29?
Exactly. So Jake Ellenberger matches up very good against Josh Koscheck. Is he going to knock him out? I'm not sure. However, Josh Koscheck has been knocked out his last 2 fights, so I did go Jake Ellenberger for my Kountermove selection.
Why do I know the name Josh Koscheck?
He's been around for a long
Has he?
time.
Like, that name actually sticks out. Like, hey, I know who that is.
I
don't know why,
well,
but...
The Ultimate Fighter Season 1, there's their big... what they claim launched the UFC, and it has stuff like Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner, guys that casual fans will remember. Josh Koscheck was on that first season, so he has that cachet. And he fought Georges St. Pierre twice, including once for the UFC title, so he has some name marketability for sure. But as I mentioned, at 37 years old, I feel like he's kind of getting near the end of the road. And had they matched him up against another up and comer, or maybe somebody that he just matched up good against, he could beat them. Unfortunately,
this is not that fight.
It's a bad matchup. He's basically fighting himself 5 years ago, and he was good 5 years ago.
Not so good now.
I don't like the matchup for him. I really don't.
Richie Walsh versus Alan Jouban.
Alan Jouban.
Jouban, where's he from?
Now he's living out of L.A. He's like a bit of a model. I believe he was a model before.
Oh, he's a male model?
Looks good, man.
He's a fighter/model and not the other way around?
That Alan Jouban is so hot right now.
He's selling for $1,250 on DraftKings, $5,200 on Kountermove.
Too much.
And really? Too much.
That's expensive.
That's super expensive.
Very.
So you're saying Richie Walsh, is down at $7,400 on DraftKings?
Yeah.
Might be something you're going for here?
Yeah, I scooped him off my DraftKings team for sure. Once again, another cheap player that I believe, even if he's going to lose this fight, if he can coast it to the third round, he's going to get some takedowns, he's going to stuff some takedowns, he'll land some significant strikes. He spent his last 2 weeks out in California at Team Alpha Male, a very well-known gym out of Sacramento area. So I think he's going to be well-trained. I like him. He's young at only 26 years old. He's going to have some pop in his step. And not to say anything's wrong with Jouban, but for the price that they're putting him at, it's crazy.
Like he's a massive favorite, at least according to this price.
But even in actual betting odds, I believe he's a minus 440 right now.
Which is pretty significant.
It's pretty significant. People think that Richie Walsh is going to get blown out, but he's got enough of a chin.
What's Walsh paying on the other side? Plus what?
I believe he's got plus 325.
So do you think he could win 1 in 3 fights? These guys fight 3 times. Does he win once?
Yeah, and Alan
Jouban
won his UFC debut his last time out against a fellow by the name of Seth Baczynski, but he was taking a beating prior to knocking out Baczynski. So it's not unheralded that Richie Walsh might give him some trouble here. And if that's the case, and I'm getting him for so cheap, yeah, I'm putting him on my team for sure.
Could it go 3 rounds?
Yeah, I think it does go 3 rounds.
And then this is the sort of value that you want to get in the daily game just to pile up those counter points, to pile up significant strikes, reversals.
If he gets 30 points, I know that doesn't sound like much.
It doesn't, but
the
it's better
value
than
that I'm
0.
For him, if I can only afford him because now I can get people like Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm who will score a huge bulk of points, then it balances itself out. I think it's a good strategy. I mean, it remains to be seen, but I think filthy Richie Walsh, good value.
He is filthy.
Very filthy.
He'll muck it up with you? Is that what he's going to do?
He's got to make it a dirty fair.
All right, so then we have Tony Ferguson versus, Jelison Tibet?
Glycin Tebow.
Okay, so he's not French.
No.
Okay.
You always say it as if they're French. MMA is illegal in France. Not a whole lot of guys.
Listen, he could be from Chad.
Actually, to be honest,
he could be from Vietnam.
He's been living in America.
He could be from
Quebecois. 10 years.
Listen, I'm thinking in UFC fighters. I'm thinking Georges St. Pierre.
Georges.
So who's gonna win?
This is a tough one. Gleison Tebow doesn't typically get put away.
Well, that's good because he's only 8,500 on DraftKings.
He doesn't score a whole lot. He doesn't really go for takedowns. He doesn't really throw a whole lot of strikes.
What the hell does he do? Does he lay on the ground and just not get punched?
Well, he's basically the equivalent of fighting a fire hydrant, right? You're not likely going to get him to the ground. That's probably not going to happen. And likewise, hitting him doesn't really seem to do much damage. He doesn't really do much to you.
So he has the Homer Simpson strategy of fighting. He just stands there and gets punched, and it's like,
Put it this way. He is actively on the UFC roster. He has the most split decision wins out of any fighter, which means more times than not, 2 of the judges go, yeah, I guess he won. And one of them goes, no, he didn't. And the other guy won, and he'll get a split. More of them than anybody actively on the roster. So it's hard to bet on him because they're very close affairs. He's not a high scoring guy unless he's going to choke the person out. And against Tony Ferguson, not going to happen. Tony Ferguson would be the better pick. But if you know he's not
expensive,
and if you know he's not going to get a knockout, and you know he's not going to get a submission, then wouldn't you rather try to get somebody who?
Yeah, I'd rather gamble on this elsewhere. 21 years old, 20 fights. That's a lot of fights.
21 years old, who?
Ferguson. That's what it says. Ferguson, 21 years old, 17-3.
Yeah, I don't think he's 21 years old.
Well, then they're lying to me.
Yeah, I definitely think he's older than that. But even a guy like Gleison Tebow, he's 31 years old, and he's been fighting in the UFC since
41 fights.
2006.
That's crazy.
He's been
so this is
9 years in the UFC. That's a lot.
So in terms of the daily game, this is a stay away.
This is a stay away. If you wanted Tony Ferguson, I could see the argument, but he'd have to be cheaper. The fact that he's $12,000, I mean, a guy in Gleison Tebow has been knocked out twice in 9 years in the UFC. You're not going to get the knockout. He's not going to get submitted. This is a stay away. I think just steer clear of this one.
Yeah, and Ferguson's supremely overvalued. I mean, even on Kountermove, 5,400. I mean, that's the same range as Holm was.
And likewise, the people are like, okay, well, Gleison Tebow's cheap. Maybe I'll take a pick at him. He's not a point getter, and for that reason, he's not worth the 8,400 that he is as well.
All right, Mark, the Filipino wrecking machine, Munoz.
Yep.
Versus Rowan.
Yeah.
No, that's like Joan.
Rowan.
Carnero.
Yeah.
Like Canyonero.
Canyonero. You know, this guy's been around a long time.
Of course, it's a 37-year-old fighting a 36-year-old.
Yeah, and not only that, but he's been cut from the UFC for a long time now. Like, he fought in the UFC back in the day, and he's been cut. And then so maybe like 3 months ago, they asked him, they're like, do you want to fight in a one-night tournament? You have to fight 3 guys? He was
Deal. I'm in.
He's like, sure, I'm 36. What else am I going to do? Beats the 3 guys, right? So he wins this one-night tournament, and then the UFC signs him. But interesting note, he won the tournament, fought 3 times at 170 pounds. And now he's jumping up to 185 pounds to fight a very large individual, Mark Munoz.
So does he have a chance?
Yeah,
he's very cheap.
Yeah, I know. I actually put him on my Countermove lineup because for
$4,100. That's you're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
So cheap. And Mark Munoz, likewise, I remember I seen him on DraftKings, and he was $12,000. And they really expect him to get the first round finish, and I don't necessarily see it that way. He's a guy notorious for letting himself get out of shape between fights. Like, he can balloon up to 250 pounds.
Well, here's my
really
thing.
Kills your athleticism.
If this guy was fighting at 170 and now he's going up to 185, isn't like the significant just strength of the punch had the ability to knock him out right away?
You would think so, but he's also, what he's carrying into that is that he's got the speed advantage and he's going to have the cardio advantage. And if he can just, the other thing is that he's savvy. At 37 years old, he doesn't make as many mistakes as a younger kid does. Mark Munoz is also an elder fighter as well, but Carnero's a guy that just won 3 fights in a single night. He's a strategy player. He knows how to get by. He knows what to do. And training out of American Top Team Atlanta, he's got another teammate on the card. I really think he's put in a good workload. And I don't think he necessarily wins the fight. But as we mentioned with Richie Walsh, he can score points. And at $4,100, I'm really liking him, actually, in as far as the counter move.
So we're going to call him a counter move play, stay away on DraftKings. There's better priced players, better priced fighters for that price range.
Well, because there's a value disparity between both sites. It's all about configuring what the best team is and spending the right proper money. Carnero worked very good for DraftKings, or not for DraftKings, for Countermove. Not so much on my DraftKings team, but I think he's actually a decent play. So if you're looking at him on both and it's the right price and it's the right look for your team, I think he's one of the cheap players that you want to play on.
Norifumi Kamamoto.
Kid
Yamamoto.
Oh, yeah.
Japanese?
Oh, yeah.
All right, nailed that one. Versus Roman Salazar.
Who
you got?
From Arizona. This one's actually very tough.
Because General Salazar is a underdog by the pricing, at least. 8,500 on DraftKings, 4,600 on Countermove.
He's basically cannon fodder. I mean, they bring him in to just lose to somebody and then, go on to bigger and better things. He made his UFC debut on like 2 weeks' notice against Mitch Gagnon, just they needed somebody. Now, Kid Yamamoto, in 2005 and 2006, he was a Japanese legend. He was a sensation. Those days are long gone. I don't think he's fought in the UFC in maybe 3 years. He hasn't fought at all in 3 years.
Can you have the nickname Kid when you're 37?
Funny, right? But what are you going to change it to?
Old man Yamamoto?
Well, it's going to soon become
the sensei?
That's kind of what it's leaning towards. He's never won a fight in the UFC.
So this could be an upset, is what you're saying.
It could be, but Roman Salazar is awful. So I can't, in good faith, put anything behind him.
He's selling for pretty cheap here. I mean, Kountermove, he's wildly overpriced compared to his DraftKings value, but on DraftKings, $7,600. He's a cheapie.
He's one of those cheap players, and as we mentioned, you got to find the cheap players that have some value in here.
Is this a value, though?
He got blown out in like 2 minutes in his debut. He got choked out in 2 minutes. So to me, I don't see maybe he lasted 3 rounds, maybe he gets the win. I don't really see it. With somebody like Richie Walsh, I think he can get by. I think that a guy like Rowan Carnero can last the 3 rounds. Heck, he might even get a submission win of his own. But they have ways to win. With Roman Salazar,
there's no end game.
I don't really see. He might be able to take him down and hold him down and squeak it by, but I'm not liking that path to victory because it scores me absolutely no points. So I'm staying away from Roman Salazar. Kid Yamamoto, I would take a touch at him, but he's overpriced as well. So
he's a stay away for now.
Yeah.
Diego Lima versus Tim Means.
This is a good one.
This is a very close fight. This is the only fight on the card that seems to actually have close pricing. So DraftKings, $10,100, and then we have $4,800 on Kountermove, $9,900 for Means on DraftKings, $4,800 on Kountermove. So I guess, are you leaning one way over the other, or do you think this is a very close fight?
This is a very close fight, and I recommend trying to have one of the 2 guys on your team. Doesn't really matter who. However, it works out for you. On my DraftKings team, I decided to go with Diego Lima. Both guys are high output punchers. They throw lots of punches.
Will it go 3 rounds, though?
Yeah, I think it does go 3 rounds because, once again, I know both men have been finished in the past, but I have no reason to believe that this one is going to finish. And because they throw so many punches, I'm looking at either guy could score upwards of 75, 80 significant strikes. At half a point per significant strikes, you're getting 40 points right off that. There will be maybe some takedowns. There will be, there are
So they can score 50 to 60 points minus plus whatever the decision is.
Yeah, and there's the offhand chance that one of them knocks the other guy out just because they're slinging so much leather. It is an MMA fight. There's 4-round skulls. You never know what's going to happen. But yeah, for my DraftKings team, when I configured it, I had some money left over. I had basically
you upgraded to Lima, basically.
I upgraded to Lima. I took some cheaper players in my back end. I actually took Raquel Pennington. I'm sure we'll talk about that when we...
I have her in my lineup here. I'm filling it out as we go along.
Exactly. I took somebody cheap like that so I could kind of configure it. And
well, if you take Rousey, then you need some sort of salary cap relief, and that's where Pennington comes in.
100%.
Just being super cheap.
If you're going to take the most expensive player, sometimes you got to take the cheapest one.
You do.
And it helps out that in this case, my most expensive player is not fighting my least expensive player.
Which is huge.
Helps out a little bit.
No, it does, absolutely.
If Pennington, puts on a great performance, I don't have to worry about Ronda not getting any points. Maybe they both do good. Maybe I win.
Derek, the Black Beast Lewis. White guy or black guy?
Take a guess on that one.
And Ruan Potts?
Yeah, white guy from Africa.
Fang.
Weird, right?
White guy from Africa versus
South
an American
Africa.
black guy?
Yeah.
Oh, South Africa. He's an Afrikaner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fangs.
Well,
on Fangs pot.
Put it this way, as long as Fangs is an Afrikaner, he's selling for $7,300. He's a cheapie.
Listen, he only just flew over from Johannesburg yesterday.
He's going to get his ass kicked, isn't he?
Yeah. You put Derek Lewis on all your lineups. I have him on DraftKings and Kountermove.
$12,600. He's less than the average on Kountermove.
Well, what I noticed
so
is
he's a must start on Kountermove then.
Well,
he's going to knock the shit out of this guy.
He was cheaper even on DraftKings. He was similar to Mark Munoz. And as we were talking about, I don't know if Mark gets the win. I'm very confident that Derek Lewis probably finishes him more than likely in the very first round.
Why is this guy's nickname The James Caruso?
The James Krause.
Krause? He's not
Krause.
like Peter Caruso?
Nah, Krause.
No, that's too bad. James Krause. The James Krause?
The James
He's like
Krause.
the Pat Mayo?
Yeah, he's not James the Krause. He's the James.
The James?
You know what?
He's like The Rock?
I could see people thinking that's stupid, but I've talked to many people who think that's pretty cool. They like it.
So it's 50-50?
Yeah.
It's not bad for a nickname. Usually most people hate nicknames.
Wow.
So he's taking on Vladimir Lazaro?
Yeah. Close fight, actually. Close
Okay.
fight.
And that's not reflected this way. This fight is not available on DraftKings. It's only available on Kountermove. This does not factor into the DraftKings game at all. They've taken it either off the board or just...
Which is weird to me, but I mean...
Is it a prelim fight?
This happens. Yes.
And DraftKings doesn't necessarily always include the prelim fights.
Right.
Kountermove does.
Right.
So they go more in-depth. So to test your knowledge a little bit better, Kountermove's best for that, if you have a good grasp on the prelim fight. So what are you seeing here?
Well, Vladimir Lazaro, he looked good against James Vick his last... Actually, what am I saying? It was a main card fight, and it was close against a good guy in James Vick. The fight was very, very, very sloppy. His striking just looked a little all over the place. James Krause is a good, hardworking guy. My only issue with him is that for a long time at Grindhouse MMA, he was the head coach, and he's trying to get other guys ready all the time and trying to get himself ready. He's had I don't want to say lackluster run in the UFC at 2-2, but he's just been okay. Unfortunately, he's a lot tighter than Vladimir, and for that reason, I'm going to go against the Brazilian and go with the James Krause to get the job done. His body, I really like his body kick. I'm a big fan of it. He's rangy, he's lengthy, and he's got an underrated ground game that doesn't often come up, but he could use it if he needs it.
Countermove, $5,100. Any interest?
It's not a bad look. I just think that there's better value on the card. So maybe if I was in a situation where I needed somebody, then I would have a look at him. Like I said, he's not necessarily the worst, but I've really come to every UFC event when it happens, and you look at the winning team that won. The one thing that they all have in common is they're normally always getting the finish. And I'm not fully sold that he gets the finish. So I want to go with a guy like Ronda Rousey. I want to go with a guy like Derek Lewis. I want to go with those type of fighters. And yes, I'm going to take cheaper fighters on the back end.
Because you have to.
But
you have to take those.
You have to.
So what you're saying, there's just no value in that price.
I couldn't configure him onto the team because, he was a similar price to a guy like Tim Means, who I was really big up on. So I decided to just steer clear.
This one's going to give me a lot of problems here. Massio Ser Fullen.
Massio Ser Fullen. Yeah, these guys are.
Was that right?
It's Massio. Yeah, technically they call him Massio, but his full name
like
is
Massimo.
Massio
Fullen. Is he Italian?
He's from Mexico.
Oh, so he's not Italian.
That's a match.
Massio.
And you got his Colombian counterpart. This one's a little easier. I'll let you get this one.
Alexandre Torres.
Yeah, Alex Torres.
You never know in these Spanish countries how they pronounce
you never
these
know.
names.
These Colombians.
So $4,900 on Countermove, and let's see here. Fullen is $4,700 on Countermove.
Yeah, I'm gonna say there's not a whole lot of value here just because they're so inexperienced. You've got Alex Torres as 2-1. When was the last time you ever seen
2-1?
That's ridiculous.
He has the same record as me.
That is freaking ridiculous.
Not really. I'm 0-0. Undefeated.
I seen you get DQ'd one time at the apartment.
Well, that happens, all right?
Listen. He shouldn't have mounted you if you didn't want to get eye gouged.
Exactly. Right? Listen, if there's weapons within my raid, I'm going to be using them, all right?
Nobody said no weapons in play for this match. That was not agreed
no one told me it wasn't a non-DQ match.
Exactly. Well, I'm hoping someone told one of these guys because this is a classic boxer versus wrestler matchup. You got Fullen, who's 4-0 as a pro boxer. It was a Taekwondo black belt.
All right, so he comes from a combat background.
Yeah.
Just in different sports.
They both come from a combat sports background. One guy was heavily into Taekwondo, spinning kicks, and boxing. The other guy heavily into wrestling.
Okay.
So if you're matching both of them up...
You want wrestlers over Taekwondo,
yeah, 100%,
for sure, right?
100%. But he was on The Ultimate Fighter. He took his guy down, and then the guy submitted him. So doesn't really have much of a ground game, right? So my issue here is I don't know how much either guy would score realistically. I understand they're both cheap, so if you need someone, you'll throw them in. But you're actually just taking a guess. You don't know how good these guys are.
And
so
again,
how could you assume they're going to score any points whatsoever when you honestly, you have no idea?
All right, so let's hear your team. Let's hear your value picks, because here's my team so far from what you've been telling me.
Yes.
I have Ronda Rousey, Richard Walsh, Pennington, and Derek Lewis. And I have $10,100 left.
Well, then...
So I feel like I can get a pretty good fighter for that price.
Well, you've got options here, because that is the exact same team that I am on DraftKings.
Like, do I want to go with Diego Lima?
Well, that was my guy, because he was exactly...
So we almost filled out the same team.
Well, he was exactly $10,100. Now, I'm not advocating that you have to spend every single dollar.
No, absolutely
I'm not saying you have to.
And a part of this, it depends on and this is where the daily fantasy side comes in. If you're playing in a multi-entry tournament, we call them GPPs, guaranteed prize pool. So it's $10 entry. It has 4,700 people in it. First prize is like $20,000.
Yeah.
In those sorts of tournaments, there's a huge premium on having a unique lineup.
Oh, for
and
sure.
the one thing that a lot of people do is use up their entire salary cap when, let's say, you could take a $1,000 hit if I don't take Lima, and let's say I go down the list a little bit and I say, you know what, I want Tim Means for $9.99, or even just say screw it, I'm going to take Ruan Potts for.
That's bad. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
I get the point.
But hypothetically speaking, that even if I left $2,000 left over, no one's going to have the same team as me. So if I win, I win. The problem is if you load up with too many favorites and have these like you and I just basically pick the same roster, then we're splitting. And, if you and I are doing it, then a lot of people are going to have it too. So there is value to be had in this. And if it is a multi-entry tournament, you should be playing like 10 rosters. You shouldn't just be playing one. One is for cash game. We have a good cash game lineup. We do not have a good tournament lineup.
Right. Well, like you said, you're going to have to take different scenarios. I would advise you, if you're making your team right now, to not take Diego Luna, to take a guy like...
well, you just don't want me to win. You want to beat me.
No, because I think Tim Means is a coin flip on who's going to score more. So if our team scores the exact amount, and I got Diego Lima, and you got Tim Means, then one of us is going to win, one of us is not going to win.
There's the team right here. So the MMA, $30K guaranteed. The guillotine. I'm in.
Sign me up for some $30K.
There we go. $10 entry.
I don't want to play no fantasy sports free roll. Sign me up for the big money games.
Let's go to Countermove then. What's your Countermove team looking like?
Countermove, I've got, once again, Ronda Rousey. This time I decide to fit, and this is beautiful here.
You can fit the...
You can really fit a bunch of good picks. And so on DraftKings, I want Ronda Rousey. I wanted Derek Lewis, and I couldn't fit in Holly Holm. Countermove, what's up, what's up? I got Ronda Rousey, I got Derek Lewis, I got Holly Holm. So that's great for me. Now I need some cheaper players. I decided to take Rowan Carnero at 4,100 because he's so cheap that if I take him, then it gives me a good $5,000. Okay, who's $5,000? I've got options here, but there's one guy that happens to be an exact $5,000, and it's Jake Ellenberger. And there is a distinctive possibility that he knocks out Koscheck in the first round.
So you're saying that's where you want to spend that $5,000?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but in a picture-perfect world, Ronda Rousey can submit her opponent in the first round. Holly Holm can get the knockout in the first round. Ellenberger can get the knockout in the first round. Derek Lewis can get the knockout in the first round. If they all get through with those results, I'm killing it. Rowan Carnero, I need him to coast. I need him to, score 30 to 50 points. My team's beautiful. I know what you're saying. A lot of people are probably going to try to play a similar team. But I don't think a lot of people are into Rowan Carnero. So maybe that's what makes my team different. If someone plays 20 teams, they'll get him, I'm sure. But I'm fairly confident with that, to be honest. I like that I have the 3 projected best point getters. And a lot of people are kind of fanning Derek Lewis. I think he's coming off a loss. And I think that's why maybe more people won't be taking him. But he's going to kill Juan Potts, who's literally probably the worst person in the UFC. His nickname's Fangs, okay? He gets the nickname because he used to be a dentist, and he would go to gyms and try to sell them mouth guards, right? So he says he walks into an MMA gym one time and goes, oh, that looks like fun. I think I could do that. And shows up the next week and just becomes an MMA fighter.
Awesome.
This guy's not real, man.
He's in the UFC now.
No, Derek Lewis spent time in jail training the hard way, okay? Now he's out, and he's pissed off, and he's going to go and get him his bread, and he's knocking out Juan Potts. So put him on both. I'm really liking Derek Lewis.
Cody Saftik, host of the Bookie Beatdown on the Fight Network and Fantasy Sports Network. Where can everyone find you on Twitter?
Well, if you want to talk to Bookie Beatdown, it's at Bookie_Beatdown. But hey, if you want to talk to me in particular, it's at CJ Saftik. Anything you want to talk about, feel free. Hopefully MMA related. I don't know if I want to talk about anything per se.
Anything. Ask him non-MMA questions. Ask him like soccer questions or something like that.
If I got a bottle of wine in me, I'll attempt to answer.
You'll attempt to answer anything? All right. Anyway, that's going to do it on the Pat Mayo Hour for UFC 184. DraftKings, Countermove, preview. Let's hope we all win some cash this weekend. Thank you for tuning in. Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.